Hello everyone. Today I have with me the nucleus of many atoms, the powerhouse of many different offices, and Ranveer Singh of startups, Akshay Chaturvedi. Akshay bhai, welcome to the podcast.
Absolute pleasure. I think nobody ever has given this kind of an intro for me, so I'm absolutely humbled.
I know that I've known you from 2014, 15, something like that.
Correct.
And before,
almost a decade now.
Yeah, but before you started Leverage.Edu, this one question comes in everybody's mind. If somebody who has done well in whatever startups and they have the skills and now they feel it's time to start something of their own, where do they start? The cold start problem hits them, right?
Ayush, I think there are two types of people who start a business. I think and those are the people that we are more familiar with, are people who really fall in love with an idea and that's something within their DNA somewhere, like that's all that they can really do. And second, I think people who are slightly more right-brained and they look for the right business problem that they can where they will make a lot of money and where they will make a lot of impact. Yeah. So I have a bias for people who are of the first category. But yes, there are enough people who essentially can spot an opportunity. They might not be related to it. So I think those people end up doing great as well. So for me, it happened more of the former, but slightly of the latter as well. You need to have a really thick skin to be doing a business.
Yeah.
Anywhere, and mostly in India. Because every day somebody's going to come at you, throw stones at you. Every day there's going to be some new crisis. People are going to say all kinds of shit for you. Some people behind your back, some people in front of your back. So if you don't have a very hard skin, it's very tough to survive this.
No, absolutely.
And it's very painful.
If you are an entrepreneur who is also successful, either your ego survives or your business does. so if your business survived, you probably are a humble person. Right? That's like we see.
You have to accept humility sooner or later.
For Absolutely. Sure. But before we jump into entrepreneurial side of things, I come from Varanasi.
Fellow UP boys.
Yeah. So my father sent me to a good school because he was like, I just want my son to speak Indian.
It was the same thing with me.
But what's the story? Let's jump in.
No, my dad moved to Delhi and when I was like toddler of sorts. And my father and mother's only dream in life was that I should be able to speak in English.
Yeah.
So my earliest memories, me behind my papa's Bajaj Chetak, and he would speak to every single kid who would alight from school buses in Delhi and figure out which kid is speaking better English. That's where I will put my guy. Wow. So bingo there.
But where I'm coming down to is today Leverage.Edu is sending so many people abroad.
This year the number is slated to be about closer to 20,000 plus in this calendar year. I dreamed of going to Oxford. And I did secure an admission to Oxford, SET Business School in 2013. But at that point of time, UK did not have a post-study work visa. Oh. So I got an admit. I applied to Harvard, Stanford and Wharton like every aspiring Indian. All three of them told me to F off. And then I got admission at SET Business School, which is part of Oxford University, NUS and ISB. So I ended up going to ISB, which worked out well for me in life. Yeah. And I think that also made me realize that higher education abroad is not just about going abroad. It's also about how the immigration laws work. It's also about, is this really going to add value or not? And lastly, I think something that you are a big propagator of, I think it's important that education in, I think 2023 or even like say a couple of years back, I think it means zero today. I think they really care about a job at the end of the entire thing. So I think our focus on day zero, right from the day one was, okay, can we really put this person into a job that can really feed their families? And a large part of our clientele today, a large part of our students today are coming from tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 India. These are people who don't end up getting the lucrative opportunities that are out there in the country today. So the idea also was to create opportunities for these guys.
What made you, go for that startup bug?
So in fact, Ayush, let me go slightly further back to say that I wasn't as brave as people like you and Ritesh Agarwal are to start things right off the hook. I think I always wanted to be a founder. I was doing things when I was in grade 3, I was selling glaze paper in my school. When I was in grade 4, I started a small club. I used to live in a government colony in Delhi in Connaught Place, and I started a small club where people would come in the evening, play my board games, have access to my comic books, and pay me 100 rupee subscription fee. And then did multiple things. I told you about the sweatshirt thing. I started a sweatshirt business when I was 16 years old. Wow. And then we started an event management company of sorts with another friend of mine. So we did a lot of those small side gigs of sorts, but was always figuring out when is the right time to go out and dedicate myself fully to something. I think I got lucky at some point of time and started out Leverage.
That's so important to fall in love with what you want to do, right? A lot of founders today see fundraising as a milestone that if I've raised first round of funding, that's some validation from the market, right? Would love to understand the other side of this from you.
No, Ayush, I would say I'm guilty of that. And I say this often to the folks who have backed me as well in the journey. You should take VC for the right reasons. You should not take a lot of VC. Probably say one round with the right backers and the right partners who are really gonna be working with you to improve you as a founder, to improve you as an individual, to improve how you look at a business, how you'll grow a business. I think the coaching part is really important within a VC ecosystem. The money is not as important. But if you find the right coach, even with that first 100K, 200K, $500,000 check, they'll be able to kind of project your whole journey. So if I was to go back in hindsight, of course I would have taken one or two checks, but I would have largely avoided taking a lot of VC early on and would have rather told a younger Akshay from 5 years back that, boss, you figure out what dhanda, let me specifically call it that, what dhanda you really want to build. And then maybe as you scale it, if you have a VC partner / somebody from the ecosystem behind you, figure out how do you kind of scale it with the right avenues, with the right cost, by adding the right dose of technology, and maybe raise P 5 years, 6 years, 7 years down. And maybe then end up at the IPO milestone as a rich founder. If we can, through any medium, reach out to younger founders and tell them that, boss, don't chase these milestones, they're not important. A line in the pink paper is not really going to change your life. XYZ journals writing about you and you tweeting about it, or you putting an Instagram post around it, it's only gonna stick with you also for about 1 hour, with everybody else for about 48 hours. And then it really does not matter. What really matters is you having a very solid business and knowing yourself, just by yourself, that you're building a great business, and at some point of time it will have its value.
So customer money is the best money, right?
Customer money is the best money, always was, always is. I think we are on the right path in India. I think more founders are starting to realize this. So VCs will have to really up their game if they want people to take their money.
You did talk about wealth creation. That wealth creation for founders is not tied to raising capital necessarily, right? In some cases it might be. But how does that math work for a founder who is starting out?
Founder's life can be romanticized from the outside, but it is hard, man, because you're very far away from a market salary. That I would in fact say the right backers, the right investors, the right VCs should encourage their founders to have enough cash in the bank so that they don't have to think about it at all. And they have a comfortable livelihood around themselves and they're just focusing on the company's growth. But I think a lot of people actually romanticize founders not making money and having a very shoddy lifestyle. I think that's crap. If the founder is bringing in senior people who are making a lot more money than he or she is, I think that's good enough. They're demonstrating that they really want to kind of put the company first and everything else later. But then it's somebody else's responsibility to take care of the founder's life as well. And founders also should not romanticize with giving up things and not thinking about anything but building a company, because it's going to come back 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years later, and then you're going to say, oh, hey, you know what, crap.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I also feel like in my journey, I did end up, finding some pride in some struggle. Right?
All of us do. I'll just add something to that. I think first time founders like you and me, who come from outside the ecosystem, we don't know better. So hence it's the responsibility of the ecosystem and folks who are essentially coming in and advising us, backing us. It's their responsibility to ensure that what you're doing is wrong.
Absolutely.
Take care of yourself.
If you are a founder and you're seeking VC money, what are you signing up for?
I think it's super important for anybody taking VC money to first understand how a VC works. You figure out, okay, how much money they have raised, how much they have returned back to their LP. So what kind of pressure are they going to be in? If you're the last check out of a certain fund, they're going to come back to you much sooner for the return. If you're one of the first few investments out of a new fund, you are slightly better off. For none of their faults, VCs also are investing somebody else's money. They're money managers, they're wealth managers of very extremely rich people in the world. And they have a certain responsibility to justify those returns that they promise. And at the end of the day, I think I would just like to add that you have to realize that VC is a very risky asset class.
Exactly.
So somebody is expecting very high returns from this. And they're going to put all that Jacob pressure on you as an entrepreneur or as a team.
So let's play a VC game here. I'm a VC who went to you, who is a limited partner, and I'm seeking for money, right? So how much money am I supposed to return to you? What's your expectation?
Return me at least 3 to 5x because other money, my remaining 95% money, which I've invested in safe asset classes, it's already giving me great returns, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40%.
You mentioned VC is a very risky asset class, which means that out of, let's say, 100 investments that we make, how many companies would you expect to succeed and what's the return would you expect from them?
This person is going to be really fixated on their absolute returns.
Yeah.
And hence the VC, knowing that, okay, I have to give these XYZ returns, the only way they can make it happen is they either follow either of these strategies. Either they're a late stage fund and they said, okay, you know what, I'm going to invest in 10 companies. Each of these 10 companies needs to give me 3 to 5x returns.
Yeah.
Or I play early on and I bet on these moonshot ideas, and I know that, okay, only 2 of my 100 companies are going to be fund returners. Maybe 3 will essentially be slightly high growth, and maybe 5 will essentially give me my funds back, and maybe 80, 90 will absolutely be duds, or they might essentially be sell-offs and they might not return me anything. So I know that, at least knowing that each of these 100 investments that I make have to be absolute moonshot, and they have to have the potential of being billion-dollar exits. And hence, when a founder would essentially come to this VC and they would say, you know what, I'm building a great business, it's going to make so much more impact and I'm going to make a really high profit. Sometimes this VC, despite lacking the entrepreneur, despite lacking the founder, might not be able to back them, because they will say that, you know what, you're not my moonshot. And I can't not back a moonshot because that's what I've signed up for with my LP.
Exactly. So if these 4 or 5 companies are returning the capital for the failures of the rest 90, you must be expecting a really high return from these companies, right?
Between 80 to 100x at the bare minimum.
Wow, 80
From
to
the capital
100x
that
as
they
the
would have
bare
invested.
minimum. And probably a couple or 3 that are really did well. 800x is
So these
also...
are fund returners, right? Somebody would have put in
Exactly.
$1 million, $1.5 million, and it's going to take care of the $100 million fund. So you have to have a minimum return so that it takes care of the entire portfolio.
Probably most of these people who end up taking VC money, what they don't realize is that the rest 90 which failed also need to have the 500, 800x potential.
No, correct. And the beauty of this is that each of those other 90 founders also had the capability of building a great business. But in chasing this random unicornish outcome, they lost their plot. Because they had to do things which were not right for the business, which were not right for the business model right from day zero.
You know, like having VC money does not mean, okay, you've made it, or not having VC money does not mean that you're shit, right? Like
Absolutely.
you could still be building a very meaningful business.
At the same time, there should be people who advise the founder but don't impose their will on the founder. Because a founder does know how to run their business to a very large degree, say 80-90% at the very least. And if they are allowed to take risky bets, that's what kind of really changes the business. I think an example that comes to my head is Ease My Trip, right? And these guys have built such a fantastic business. And I was having dinner with Prashant a couple of weeks back, and I think you must know about this as well. When COVID came in, they were the only folks out there who refunded all the money that was blocked. It was they said, okay, you know what, we have XYZ crores in internal accruals. We're going to use our internal accruals to refund all the money that is stuck for these guys. Even though our money is going to come in, it's going to be working a bit of lag, our money is going to come in about 5-6 months. And the customers came back in droves. They won their trust. They won their trust for the longest time.
And your example also reminds me of Paul Graham, right? He mentioned that there is the only competitor you should be afraid of is a company, no matter how big or small, genuinely cares about their customers, because customers know,
No, of
right?
course. I think he also said something very important, that as you scale, you should be worried about the founder who is super young right now, 16, 17 years old, in a garage right now, building a model to absolutely disrupt you.
Yeah.
I think as long as you live with that level of paranoia and keep trying to disrupt yourself as a business, I think that's where the large wins come from.
That is amazing. You mentioned that if you were talking to a young Akshay, you would have educated him about private equity and spend time, have more ownership and work with a PE firm.
I think the private equity structure works really well, and that's why you have a large set of our companies over the last 3 decades who have scaled the business to a certain degree by themselves as entrepreneurs, as very fiery entrepreneurs, and then have had private equity come in and be able to kind of take them to the next level of growth as partners, as growth partners, as risk-sharing partners, as a specific project partners. I think that model works really well for the Indian sensibilities as well. And I think at that point of time, you have done your fair share of mistakes. You have fallen down enough, and you have had enough chances of kind of knowing what to do and what not to do. You're able to also ensure that the investor is a partner and not your boss. I think the role of an investor is very well suited and very well aligned at a private equity level as compared to a VC level sometimes.
If I'm building a business which I'm trying to figure out whether it's a better fit for PE or VC, what's the difference? What should I look for?
I think growing profits, well recurring cash flow, identified customer set, large TAM, knowing it okay. So I think as long as you've built out that business model where there is absolute predictability in terms of cash flows, they're able to also build predictability in their model about the kind of returns that this will give me over a 3, 5, 7, 8 year time horizon. But more importantly, they're going to make an investment after a lot of sound reasoning and a lot of sound logic because they don't want to lose money on any single of the investments. They really make sure this is gonna give me X returns. I don't want like moonshot returns, but I want these XYZ returns, which I've really promised my investor set. And only then can I go out in the market and raise my next fund. So for them, that credibility, that predictability becomes super important.
As a founder, you are selling all the time, 24/7. What is one time where you felt that things are not going right, but you had to hold the ship together?
Felt like this almost on a lot of days of my life over the last 6.5 years as we've been building Leverage. But I remember one of these guys who was one of our early investors sat me down one fine evening over beer and said that, you know what, you are the founder. Not everybody else is thinking like you are thinking. So don't expect them to do what you are doing. Because if you do that continuously, of the 11 folks that work for you, who work with you, they're all going to run away. I think that was a very light bulb moment in my life. And I think at that point of time, I realized that every time you're working with somebody, you can't expect them to make sense out of nothing. You can't expect them to be absolutely optimistic despite shit breaking down every single morning. You have to give them structure. You have to give them very specific tasks. You have to give them very realistic milestones about which they feel great, about which they kind of, what they celebrate, what they look forward to. At the same time, I think that really graduates into a founder really obsessing about culture. Because if you build a good culture where people are happy, where people are looking forward to tomorrow, where people are thinking about, hey, you know what, the company's going to take care of me. I think that trust, people repay back the trust in like 10, 20, 30 times. And I think as you graduate further out, it's super important that you find the right peer partners who can hold that horse for you. For me, what has worked is I always have thought of your workplace needs to be fun. We're thinking about how can we bring more fun people. That doesn't mean that we don't think about how do we bring a more average intelligent person out into the group. But I think we're always doing a check mark around, is this person fun to work with? If they're fun to work with, of course they're going to be having a good time at Leverage and they're going to be really adding into our DNA.
That is amazing. I want to ask you about one story where as an individual, as a person, because of your something which you lacked or a mistake you made, you fell in a ditch and the story ends there. Is there a story like that?
बहुत सारी stories हैं यार, सोचनी पड़ेंगी. I think as a founder, you really obsess about 0 to 1 products and you think ये भी कर लेना चाहिए, वो भी कर लेना चाहिए. We have tried multiple products because you're saying that okay, we remained in the ditch. Which even today people see value. People say that, hey, you know what, why does Leverage not do this and this and this? And they don't realize that we have already tried this and this and failed at it. I think what that did to us as a DNA is that it built a culture of experimentation that we're super proud of. Our core businesses today are a product of some experimentation that we did about just before COVID. And a lot of other things that we're doing right now. 20% of our business is financial services. We give loans, we do remittances. It all started as an experiment. Kind of scaled from 30 CR an year to now about 700 CR an year in terms of loans that we give out.
Oh wow!
Failing is
that's more than most fintechs.
But coming back to the topic, I think failing is great. I think as long as it builds a mental muscle of you trying to do the right things as you move forward in the future.
How do you find that right person? What are the things to look for? How do you decide to build a business together with anyone?
I think I've been super lucky. Everybody I work with, I know them from my previous life. They're all friends. Digvijay, who's my chief operating officer, now my co-founder, he and I go back to about a decade back. When he used to be the guy who's responsible for me passing my exams in business school. Rachit, I know him since 2008, who's building a financial services vertical, our CEO of a platform business. I know him for the last, we did that selling hoodies together back in the day, doing all those funny things about 15 years back. Aman was my vendor when I was first thinking of starting up in 2012.
Wow.
So over time, of course, I got lucky and brought these guys into the company. I think as we now move forward and try to get other people, other leadership in the company, I think one thing that really works well is if this person has demonstrated execution in a larger setup like that before, and B, like I said, that plus are they fun? Every time I've kind of checkmarked against fun, that's always worked out for some reason. So I'm a big believer in the fact that company building is not easy. Like Elon Musk says, it's like eating glass. I think the one advice that I give to all university students is that don't focus on the grades as much, don't focus on anything else as much, but make sure that you walk away with a 200, 300, 500 people contact book. Because the people who you are with in college, they're going to open doors for you wherever you move in life. So make sure you know anyone and everyone. So I'm a big believer of the fact that invest in building long-term relationships with long-term people, and the compounding that comes off from it is absolutely magical.
It's incredible. You mentioned Rancher learning and people going for specialized courses and stuff like that. If you can share, what are like the top 3 courses people are going for these days, which, you know, data says, but we don't usually expect, apart from the normal ones?
I'm sure you can judge the first one. So I think 21% of all our folks last year went for data science programs.
Got it.
We work with one of these universities in Southeast Australia. They have a course in marine biology. So they
Marine biology,
yes,
wow.
So they actually 3 times every week the student has to scuba dive as part of the program.
Wow.
And study corals and study the aqua life. And most folks who graduate out of this program, if they decide to follow this through and through, they end up working in Antarctica. A course in winemaking in a university in Scotland that is again a partner of ours. But the last one that I have for you is again going back to sports analytics. We have universities who are specifically focused on this with a very practical curriculum across the world, and then you get a guaranteed internship at one of these colleges with Chelsea Football Club for 8 months.
You know, any of these courses I did not expect at all. If you were in your early 20s today, what you would be doing if not Leverage.Do?
I think I've just done a different version of Leverage.Do. Possibly it might have been, it could be different versions of it, right? It could be creating new age colleges in the country, our own version of, maybe we can't do marine biology, but we can do a bunch of other things in India. And maybe something, but it would be something in the higher education space. People who don't come from anywhere can find a great footing for themselves and are able to kind of ensure that family gets access to a better life as they progress in their life.
Thank you so much, Akshay Bhai, for taking out all this time and coming all the way to record this podcast. I'm sure it will help many other founders. It did help me find answers to a lot of questions which I wonder about.
No, thank you, Ayush, for hosting. This felt absolutely warm. Thank you for making the ecosystem brighter with what you're doing. And I'm a massive supporter as always.
Absolute pleasure to host you.
Cheers.